6:45, this is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The morning news edited by Danushka Madhavala, read by Soundithavam. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that the government will sign agreements with foreign debtors to obtain grace periods for loan repayments. 14,000 peace and reconciliation officers will be set up island-wide. The Mahanayaka of the Askiriya chapter, the most venerable Varakagoda Jnanaratna Thera, says that Buddhism has more internal threats than external. The Robotics Challenge 2024, organized by the University of Moratuwa, will be held tomorrow at the university premises. The Prime Minister had a long discussion with the Shanghai Mayor. The railway operations on the coastal line will experience delays today and tomorrow. In foreign news, Poland's Prime Minister warns that war a real threat and Europe not ready. In sports, the second test between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh will be played in Chattogram today. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that the government will sign agreements with the foreign debtors to obtain grace periods for loan repayments. Agreements will be reached with regard to loan repayments for a period of 20 years. The minister said that the government will be able to pay the loans at a longer period. The President and the Prime Minister were also having discussions with several countries in this regard. The minister made these comments while participating at a prize-giving ceremony of the Polgolla Sri Nandasara Dhamma School yesterday. Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa says that 14,000 peace and reconciliation officers will be set up island-wide. These officers will be set up covering all Grama Niladhari divisions in the country. The minister said that the relevant draft bill was passed in Parliament last January. The minister made these comments after a courtesy visit to the Mahanayaka of the Askiriya chapter, the most venerable Varakagoda Jnanaratna Thera, yesterday. The Mahanayaka of the Askiriya chapter, the most venerable Varakagoda Jnanaratna Thera, says that Buddhism has more internal threats than external. The Thera pointed out that some groups used external forces to defeat Buddhism until recently, but now they are harming the Buddhism using monks and Buddhists. The Venerable Thera made these comments at a ceremony held at the Saravana Viharaya in Polgolla yesterday. The Robotics Challenge 2024, organized by the University of Moratuwa, will be held tomorrow at the university premises. It is the largest and most pioneering robotics festival in the country, poised to captivate young students and undergraduates across Sri Lanka. This is the 11th edition of the Robotics Challenge. The final robotics competition will also be held at the university premises tomorrow. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, said the new bill on electricity sector reforms will be gazetted in the next 2 weeks. Subsequently, the new bill will be presented to Parliament during the last week of April, according to the Minister. Taking to X to announce this, Wijesekara stated that after reviewing, the certification to proceed with the new draft bill was issued by the Attorney General last Monday. Thus, the Energy Minister highlighted that the stakeholders or any interested individuals will have at least 2 weeks to review the gazetted bill and 2 more weeks from the day of presentation to Parliament to challenge the bill's legality. Minister Wijesekara added that the suggestions and issues raised by the development agencies and stakeholders have been incorporated as amendments to the draft bill that was gazetted in December by the Legal Draftsman's Department, and the inconsistencies in the Sinhala and Tamil translations were also updated. The Department of Railways said that the railway operations on the coastal line will experience delays today and tomorrow. The department attributed the delays to the railway operations being limited to a single track between Vellavatta and Colombo Fort railway stations due to a pipeline maintenance activity being carried out by the Urban Development Authority. However, the Department of Railways says that the train operations on the coastal line will be restored after Sunday night. That concludes local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena had a long discussion with the Shanghai Mayor Gong Sen in Shanghai, China yesterday. It was agreed to establish a strong relationship between Shanghai, China, which is ranked first among the world's port cities, and the cities of Colombo and Hambantota. Both cities have been planned to be developed as a maritime hub in the east and west shipping routes in the future. A long time has passed since the sister city agreement between Colombo and Shanghai was signed. The Prime Minister pointed out that further work can be carried out under this agreement, which was signed when his brother Prasanna Gunawardena was holding the post of mayor, and came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Pavedamahatmya.
Watch Life is brought to you by
CIB New Year offer. Valuable gifts and gift vouchers. 25% discount for bank cards till 10th of April. Visit CIB today. CIB revives once always.
The National STD and AIDS Control Program in Sri Lanka said that the HIV-infected people are on the rise, with 695 new HIV-positive people identified in the country in 2023. The director of the National STD AIDS Control Program Sri Lanka, Dr. Janaki Vidanapathirana, said that the increase of HIV-positive people with 695 in 2023 is a 14% increase compared to 2022 during a press conference held in Colombo. The highest number of those affected with HIV have been reported from the Western Province, according to the UNAIDS estimate received, and came to you in Watchlight.
CIB New Year offer. Valuable gifts and gift vouchers. 25% discount for bank cards till 10th of April. Visit CIB today. CIB revives once always.
Coming up, World News.
Making headlines this morning, Poland's Prime Minister warns that war a real threat and Europe not ready. Massive US crane to haul wreckage after deadly Baltimore bridge collapse. And Israel crisis deepens over ultra-Orthodox draft. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has delivered a blunt warning that Europe has entered a pre-war era, and if Ukraine is defeated by Russia, nobody in Europe will be able to feel safe. Quoting him, "I don't want to scare anyone, but war is no longer a concept from the past," he told European media. "It's real and it started over 2 years ago." His comments came as a fresh barrage of Russian missiles targeted Ukraine. Russia has intensified its bombardment of Ukraine in recent weeks. Overnight, into Friday, Ukraine's Air Force said it had shot down 58 drones and 26 missiles, and Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said energy infrastructure had been damaged in 6 regions in the west, center and the east of the country. The largest crane on the eastern U.S. seaboard has arrived in Baltimore as part of the massive cleanup effort after the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. Shipments in and out of one of the country's busiest ports are suspended while the wreckage hangs over the cargo ship that crashed into it. The search for the bodies of 4 workers remains on hold because of the dangers of diving amongst the wreckage. Some $60 million in federal emergency funds will go towards recovery efforts. President Joe Biden said he is headed to Baltimore next week to view the crash's fallout and speak to federal efforts. The port is a main economic generator for the state of Maryland and a vital artery for imports and exports of the U.S. and global trade. Israel's High Court has issued an order in the long-running dispute over ultra-Orthodox military exemptions, deepening a crisis in the government. It instructed a funding freeze for ultra-Orthodox or Haredi educational institutions whose students are eligible for conscription. Haredi parties in the government have reacted angrily, while a secular party has threatened to quit over the issue. Ultra-Orthodox exemptions are opposed by a majority of Israelis. The Haredi community comprises about 12% of the population, but those in full-time Torah study are exempt from mandatory military service. Conscription applies to almost all other Israelis, apart from Israeli Arabs, from the age of 18 for both men and women. The government is debating a bill which reportedly seeks to strike a compromise by allowing exemptions with limitations. Back to the headlines of the world news. Poland's Prime Minister warns that war a real threat and Europe not ready. Massive US crane to haul wreckage after deadly Baltimore bridge collapse. And Israel crisis deepens over ultra-Orthodox draft. With that we conclude this bulletin of world news.
Development News.
The Education Minister Dr. Sudhir Premajanta said the Gazette notification to recruit 2,535 teaching assistants to estate schools will be published in May. He said it is expected to recruit that group and send them to schools after providing them with basic training. However, the minister said that there is still a huge shortage of teachers in estate schools, since there is a scarcity of qualified personnel to be recruited as teachers to the estate schools. That came to you in development news.
Moving on with sports news.
The second test between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh will be played in Chattogram today. Sri Lanka won the first test and leads the two-match series at present. And moving on to news at home, skipper Gaviru Sinha stroked a brilliant unbeaten double century, while Malita Pereira scored 118, as DS Senanayake College made a mammoth first innings total of 370 for 4 wickets, and Manama made 94 for 2 wickets at close of the first day's play in the 18th Battle of the Goals big match played at the SSC grounds yesterday. It was a record-breaking big match on the first day, while skipper Senhas gave a fine batting display to score the highest individual score with his double century. All that came to you in sports news. Business news up next.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business news, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Sri Lankan migrant labour community abroad, which significantly contributes to the economic strengthening of Sri Lanka, has remitted 289.2 billion rupees to the country in January and February this year. According to a recent report issued by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the country received $488 million in January and $476 million in February of this year. The report also indicates a significant growth in the value of remittances received by the country in February 2024 compared to February 2023, with remittances totaling $407 million. That's business news. Economic news up next.
Business news, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
On to economic news, the Bangladesh High Commissioner in Colombo recently said his country is aiming for closer cooperation with Sri Lanka in the field of public health, agriculture, tourism and youth development. He added that both nations are working for more robust shipping and air connectivity too, adding that Bangladesh is one of the top users of the Colombo port. The High Commissioner recollected how Bangladesh stood in support to Sri Lanka in their own humble way during the challenging time. He added that discussions are continuing for a PTA which will open up more and more business opportunities. That's economic news.
Weather report.
Showers or thundershowers will occur at several places in the western, southern, Sabaragamu and central provinces after 2 p.m. Showers or thundershowers may occur at a few places in the Uva and northwestern provinces also after 2 p.m. A few showers may occur in the eastern province and misty conditions can be expected at some places in the central, Sabaragamu, Uva and western provinces, also in the Gaul and Martara districts during the morning. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that the government will sign agreements with foreign debtors to obtain grace periods for loan repayments. 14,000 peace and reconciliation officers will be set up island-wide. The Mahanayaka of the Askiriya chapter, the most venerable Varakagoda Nyanaratna Thera, says that Buddhism has more internal threats than external. The Robotics Challenge 2024, organized by the University of Moratuwa, will be held tomorrow at the university premises. The Prime Minister had a long discussion with the Shanghai Mayor. The railway operations on the coastal line will experience delays today and tomorrow. Poland's Prime Minister warns that war is a real threat and Europe not ready. And the second test between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh will be played in Chattogram today. On that note, we conclude this morning's news broadcast, and it's now back to your host, Sanal, to keep you entertained this Saturday morning. Top of the morning to you, Sanal, and it's all yours.